All right. Well, as people continue to come in and get comfortable, I think we should start to kick off. Welcome to this webinar about co-design secrets and how the best EdTech teams build products that work. My name is Alex Sarlin from EdTech Insiders, and I'm so pleased to be with an incredible group of guests today. I have to mention first our sponsors for all of our EdTech Insiders events. We have Tuck Advisors, which does mergers and acquisitions in the EdTech space from both sides. Cooley, amazing global law firm to support support EdTech, and Starbridge, which is a really interesting company. It helps EdTech companies find out what's happening inside districts and how they're thinking about their strategies and what their meeting notes are like, so that they can understand them when they go talk to them about what their solutions might be. But without further ado, let's jump into some of our guests. Each of our guests is going to get a chance to introduce themselves and talk through what their company does. Meanwhile, I'm a co-founder at EdTech Insiders. We have Sarah Morin, who is our head of content in the room. She's also running the slide deck right now. And Jen LaPaz, who has been running all the marketing and operations here, is really, keeps everything running at EdTech Insiders. That's us for today. But more importantly, are our guests. So, we have four organizations represented here today: UX of EdTech, Lean Lab Education, Playlab, and Sesame Workshop, the Joan Ganskuni Center at Sesame Workshop, all of which have extensive experience in co-design and doing user experience research with educators and learners to make incredible EdTech products. So let me hand off, if we go to the next slide here, let's start with a little introduction from the folks from the Joan Ganskuni Center. So Meta and Michael, take it away.
Thanks so much, Alex. It's really great to be here. In my public social media posting about this, I keep sharing how much I love EdTech Insider. So it's nice to be joining you for this today. As you said, I'm the executive director of the Joan Ganskuni Center. We're a nonprofit research and innovation lab that works to shape a digital future that supports kids' learning and well-being. We carry forward the Sesame Street legacy, which combines research and creativity and public purpose. And we do that today in a world where kids are spending more time than ever on digital tools that usually just aren't designed with them in mind. We're really excited to be here today because all of the participants here participate in, we partner with early stage tech developers to bring a range of research-based practices, including co-design, of course, into products from the beginning. In our travels, we see a lot of companies say they involve kids, but they often mean play testing, which happens after all the decisions have been made. And whereas co-design means you work with children really early on to get them to say what the product could become, which I think is a really important distinction, which I'm excited to talk about more today. But if you think about how kids can be your collaborators, not just your users, you get insights that you would never come up with on your own, not just fun ideas, but real creative breakthroughs that can make your product better. I'll hand it off to Maytha to share more.
Thanks, Alex. Great to be here as well. I'm going to share a little bit more about the Sandbox for Literacy Innovations, which is a current project that we've launched in the past year with funding from the Walton Family Foundation, and we are working with a number of literacy ed tech creators who are wanting to both improve the underlying science of literacy of their product as well as bring kids into the design process. So we'll share a little bit more about that today. And if Sarah can play the short video that we have, it will give a little kind of color to what co-design looks like in action.
It's amazing. Just seeing the designers and students working together on solutions just like puts a huge smile on my face. It's just so amazing. Next up, let's jump to a moment. Looping. Let's jump to our next organization. It is which one? Lean Lab Education. So Katie, take it away. Tell us about Lean Lab.
Sure. Hey, y'all. Super excited to be here. I love Alex at Tech Insider, so thanks for having us. I'm Katie Booty Adorno, founder CEO at Lean Lab Education. We are a nonprofit organization that functions as an independent R&D lab, studying the full range of education product research, and our goal is to get to transformational education innovations that have been co-designed with school communities. So functionally, how we work is we have an internal house of PhD researchers, and we also have networks of schools and educators. We have Agile, the American Group of Innovative Learning Environments, which is a network of school districts, charter school systems, and individual micro schools in key go-to-market regions, as well as other regions representative of I guess more generally representative of the US population. And then we have a separate network called Co-Design Collective, which is a network of individual educators from more than 150 different schools across 27 different states. So our goal really is to matchmake. We pair products with learning environments that align to their product needs, and we co-design to improve product functionality and also do third-party evaluation aligned to the ESSA tiers of evidence. We really hope that we can resolve any tension between doing R&D that's rigorous and builds a story of impact and also supports go-to-market strategy. So that's something that we really try to balance in our work. Most recently, we just finished up a project with Brisk Teaching with one of our Agile members in Liberty Public Schools in Missouri to co-design an AI assistant for classroom teachers. And we've worked with startups that are just getting off the ground all the way up through venture-backed companies that are growing aggressively, and incumbents like McGraw-Hill and Newsela. So that's what we are up to. Happy to talk more and learn from the great panelists today.
Fantastic. And I think it's worth noting, from relatively new startups like Brisk Teaching to incumbents, this is a space where we have all of these different ed tech providers and players, all really wanting to design with students and educators in mind. Next, let's talk to Playab. Wyman, let me pass it to you and tell us about Playab.
Hey y'all, I am Wyman Koo from Playab. I'm the head of learning engineer, and thank you for having us here. We're in great company. A fan of a lot of the work that the others are sharing about and doing. Playlab's also a nonprofit. We're a tech nonprofit focused on really creating AI public infrastructure for educators and nonprofits. Our hope is to build infrastructure to allow educators and nonprofits to build and shape the technology that they want to use for their context. Why co-design means so much to us is that we want to put the design in the hands of the educators themselves. For folks who've been in education, you know how different every classroom, district, and even country is in terms of the work that's happening in terms of education, and how might we empower those folks to do that work as we go. We've been really excited. We just expanded to Ghana 2 weeks ago, which I think is a great example of some of this co-design in action. Instead of us telling the Ghanaian government how to do this work, we're actually embedding people who are spending time in Ghana and hiring folks from within their Ministry of Education to co-design and co-plan and build the structures and systems that allow it to sustain past us as we do this work together. So really, really excited about all that work. And we're young. We're about 16 months old, and we're lucky to have gotten to work with some really great folks. So thanks to meet you all.
Fantastic. Thanks, Wyman. 16 months old, just starting to walk, right? Just cruising around. And last but not least, let's talk to Alicia from UX of EdTech. Alicia was actually the impetus behind this entire webinar. We talked months ago about how great it would be to talk about co-design with the whole community, because it's such a hot and important topic. So Alicia, take it away. Tell us about UX of EdTech.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. I'm Alicia, founder and designer at UX of EdTech, and we're a design studio. So we help folks with their product design, UX research, UX writing, and design recruiting as well. And basically, our designers work solo, or we can assemble a team of specialists that's tailored to the project and help them work through that. I'm thinking of analogy real quick, if I could just give that a jar of large rocks. And I feel like my fellow panelists are like, they're going to be dropping these like large rocks. And I'm going to be adding some pebbles and sand and sprinkles to kind of top off the jar. I'm really someone that's trying to grow and learn in this space. And so hence just sparking wanting to have this event. What's top of mind for us when it comes to co-design is what I put there is actually trying to not be performative, but understand how can we create real benefits for the participants. So, we're not just here, let's say that we did co-design or let's check a box or and I've made a little comment in there about the any excuse, right, to use some markers and some stickers and stuff. But we also want to figure out ways to actually really leave a positive impact on the community or the participants that are engaging with us. And so I have a story that I'll share later, which is a pretty different crowd working with district office administrators. So we all know that that's a really important type of role and persona when it comes to the education ecosystem at large. And so love these examples of co-designing with kids. And I have a story as well that I can share later with co-designing with administrators as well. So I'll just add at the bottom there that I think one big takeaway that we can think about as we're chatting through this is just to not hesitate, to start small. I think even just diving deep with one person, you can just learn so much. And if you've got two, perhaps that can even start growing the participants network and community as well. So excited to share more, but excited to be here. Thanks, Alex.
Oh, it's great to have you here. It's great to have everyone here. We have an incredible group here representing millions and millions and millions of students reached, millions and millions of dollars invested. I think it's billions of dollars invested if you add up all the attendees to this session. So it's really quite incredible. So Katie, I want to kick things off with you because I think co-design is a term we've heard a lot in the last couple of years. It's become a little bit of a buzzword, but I'm not sure. I personally couldn't define the difference between co-design and, like Michael said, play testing or user testing or user experience research. I'd love just a little bit, it doesn't have to be, actual definitions, but a little bit of a setting the stage about what do we really mean by co-design and what are sort of some of the different approaches that you all use? How might our attended audience sort of be on the same page about what we mean when we say co-design?
Sure, happy to kick things off. I think it's important to say that co-design, the origin of co-design is really in participatory design, and to pick up where like Alicia left off, it's really about power dynamics and shifting how creation works and power structures. And that can manifest very differently depending where the product is and its journey and its developmental stage. So we think of it as a journey. At the very beginning, when you might be at a concept stage, you might be co-designing that could take the form of play testing, where you're really trying to shape the idea and how it's going to come to life. But you're really honoring the perspective of the participants and making sure that whatever you're shaping is in the image that they've helped contribute and shape. It's not a performative check off the box. I said, what you see oftentimes in like community town halls, like I already have with politicians, I already have my agenda. I'm just here to show up and check the box. That's not what you're doing. You're actually really embedding that idea. And then you follow that throughout the developmental stages. So then that can move into user design where you're embedding feedback to make the tool better. And then when you get to more late stage design and evaluation, it might be that you're shaping together the research question and you're shaping together how the research might be implemented. But again, fundamentally, it's about power structure. It's about agency of the participants. And also, and we'll get into this a little bit later about the basics and fundamentals, but it's also about honoring their time and capacity in a very real way, whether that's with money, equity in some formats, co-authorship. There's many ways to do it, but yeah.
Yeah. Alicia, you mentioned sort of non-performative user experience design or co-design, and it's come up in the chat. It's come up already that this concept of, sometimes, like you mentioned, Katie, politicians sort of bring in the public just to be able to say they brought in the public. We talked to teachers, we talked to students, and just to be able to say they did it and then, cover themselves. And that's clearly almost the exact opposite of the definition of what we all mean here by co-design. How do you weave people into the process from the beginning? So Alicia, I want to ask you, just when you say non-performative, what exactly do you mean? How do you make sure that you're actually bringing people all the way in early enough and deeply enough to help them shape the future of your products?
Yeah. Do you mind if I share a story? Is that okay with Yeah. So with some of my work with Inform K-12 and Inform K-12, we focus on helping school district administrators collaborate, work together across departments within the district and across school sites. And um, one of the hurdles we've seen is sometimes districts might be siloed from one another and not be able to share best practices. And so what we thought was if we create a co-design environment, maybe one of the benefits that we can also provide for our participants is allowing them to connect with one another and basically build a community. And so the quick story is just that we pulled in folks, again, a different crowd than kids. We pulled in folks that are directors of finance, of business, which are very important roles that allow for these mission critical student outcomes to happen. And basically, we drill into problem space. And one of the questions that I think has come up is when do we do co-design, and
Yes.
how do you not, I guess, lead the witness into what you're wanting them to design? And if you all are familiar with Johnny Ive, famous designer, worked on a lot of iconic Apple products and now is teaming up with OpenAI. There's this example where he was given this prompt of, okay, design a lunchbox. What would you do first? And the first thing that he says is, well, we would be really careful actually to not use the word box or
Mm.
lunchbox. Because that would put us in, a mental box, right? We would already come in with some preconceived notions. Better it'd be like, how would you transport, your lunch or something like that? And that's stuck with me. My mentor shared with me that story, and I share that to just say, when you're trying to pull people in at the very beginning for problem discovery, you're really just asking, what's top of mind for you? And that's what we did. What's top of mind for you? Tell me about your first your last week or your last month, and then we drill into the problems from there. On a practical note, sometimes you do have some specific areas you want to jump into, and so it might be that what we did was we created a problem menu, which is, an
Mm.
interesting thing. And there was these 6 areas that we had. And as they looked them over, there was things that resonated and some that didn't. And so we drilled into those. And so I think going back to just your original question, Alex, about performative,
Yeah.
I think it's the opposite would be a great listener, creating space to be a really strong listener and to understand what their problems are, and then to create an experience where they're able to talk with one another, and take something away. And all of our participants, they learn things from one another, and they take it back to their offices or their teams, and they're basically able to improve their workflows and improve their team processes. And so it's actually in the planning process. It's like something that we like write out in the beginning. How are they going to benefit? Like, what are they going to walk away from? Obviously they're giving us their time, energy. So probably depends on who you're working with, kids versus like school district administrators, but um, community has been one big piece for us.
Yeah, I love that example of, not leading the witness, not putting yourself into a box and sort of assuming you understand the problem or the solution before you start. Look, I want to ask the Joan Ganskuni folks but the others sort of queue up some thoughts here, because one of the things that is interesting about co-design is it can, you're talking to people really deeply. You're having deep conversations, you're doing stickies, as we saw, and you can reveal insights that you just couldn't get through any other method. It wouldn't have happened with a survey. It wouldn't have happened with a play test where you're already late in the game. I'm curious to hear each of you talk about one insight that sort of were real, like mind-blowing insight from your work where you were like, this is exactly what co-design is about. We would never have gotten to that truth through any other means. Meta and Michael, start with you guys. Meta, you can kick it off, please.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I would say most of the things that most of the sessions I've been in, it's not necessarily that things are like mind blowing, I would say, but more just like you're sort of iterating together, and you're trying to co-create an idea in a way that works for everybody and incorporates. So it's not like the kid is coming up with some like amazing. It's like you're having more conversations, and then you are figuring out how can this translate to the actual product, right? And so one of the product partners that we work with a lot is Mrs. Wordsmith. They're an ed tech company out of the UK, and they have a lot of literacy-based products. We worked with them on a product called Words of Power last summer, and the product focuses on vocabulary, and it also focuses on social emotional learning. And we worked with the kids on how do we bring those elements out more in the game, and focus on those two learning goals. But the kids really came up with a lot of wonderful ideas about how to blend those together and focus a lot on the cooperative aspects of the game. So how can you actually make the game support social emotional skills rather than just learning it conceptually? And one of the ways they came up with is your words are, the words have power. You're learning words about, blast or something like that. And so if you want to share your words with other players, right, you can then give them powers that they might not have. Or if you're running low on your energy, how can you share your energy with other players, right? So building in more of not only the vocabulary learning, but also the social emotional learning into the game was something we talked about a lot with the kids, and coming up with specific ways that the narrative of the story supported both the learning as well as the kind of developmental skills that they wanted to focus on. That one stands out a lot to me because there were so many great ideas that were generated.
That's great. I don't. Did you say, Alex, you were on mute? Did you pass the baton to me?
Yes, I said,
Yeah.
Mike,
Okay.
what do you add?
Quick. The thing I was going to add, I think everything Mavis said really happened, and happens all the time. That level of real detail that is sort of kid originated. The thing I also love is this the sort of ways in which we start the how you kick off the session. There's sort of a level setting, actual level setting where everybody sits on the floor at eye level with each other, that you're changing the power dynamic between adults and children in the room in order to create a sort of an enabling environment for those conversations where kids realize that their ideas matter just as much as everybody's, and that like a question of the day opening activity is sort of an imagining, like, how could we make our school library more playful, or what would the ideal playground look like? And it's something where everybody can contribute, all the ideas matter, and that gives a sense of their own kind of power and agency in that process. So I wanted to make a shout out to the methods that I think are also very important. They're grounded in this idea of cooperative inquiry that comes from a long research tradition.
Fantastic. Yeah, I want to dig into the power dynamics issue with education. I think that is so important. But does anybody else want to contribute ideas that, have experiences where you just had that wow moment in a co-design? It doesn't have to be a true mind-blowing, but, moment of like, we just got somewhere deeper than we would have through other methods, or if we were just sitting in a room inside our regular planning room and trying to come up things without users in the process.
Sure, I'll jump in with two quick concrete examples, but one was with a company that I know we and Maida and Michael have worked with, Lit Lab, where they came in. We were using a rapid cycle approach, meaning we did 3 different design sprints where we were gathering feedback from a classroom and then working with the product developers to improve product and redeploy. And we walked in, and this happens often, with one big assumption around how a product might be used and what should be priority on the roadmap. And that was that we thought we really wanted to improve the teacher experience. And what we quickly found was actually that they were desiring, and what they needed was for this product to work more to help facilitate independent practice with young learners. And that was a pretty radical shift and where the focus was. But it unlocked this whole new theory for the product around what the ideal use case would be, what the future would be on how they think about its use and helping drive literacy for instruction for young learners. So it really was a huge aha moment that I think wouldn't have happened unless we were willing to both listen to the users and also be dynamic enough to respond and try again and again until we got something that was closer to their needs. The second big shift I'll share is what we're more recently seeing, and I think it's because of AI and because of the availability of tools like Playab, is we've now seen a new group of districts in Missouri, and this is becoming more of a common phenomenon across the country, band together and say, we have an idea for something that would be truly groundbreaking that doesn't exist yet. And in their case, they want breakthrough assessment products. They're looking to fundamentally redefine what summative assessment could look like by leveraging AI. But the assessment incumbents that currently exist aren't meeting their demands. And so it opens up this whole new world of what does it mean for districts to use their buying power as leverage to inspire innovation. And so that's early, but I think that's a really, really exciting development as we think about how to shift different levels and levers in this world.
I mean, that's an exciting future when you actually have users coming together and saying, "This is what we need. We're going to define the problem and come to the space. You please help us get to this future we want." That is so exciting. So, Wyman, Playlab was just mentioned. I want to bring you into the conversation. One thing that we've touched on a little bit already. We saw the video from Joan Ganskuni use with these young kids being in the space doing post-its. Alicia gave an example of working with finance professionals in a school. You've done extensive co-design with educators. That's really core to the Playlab model. Can you speak to what that looks like, and just generally speak to how would any individual who's in this session determine what audience they might want to be doing co-design with? Is it students? Is it educators? Is it admin within the school, or someone else? How would they think about it, and how have you thought about it?
It constantly shifts, right? I think the most important piece where people have brought up is like the power dynamic piece. Traditional schools have so many power dynamics even already built in, from principals to leaders, instructional coaches to teachers, veteran teachers, students, families. There're just all these intersections. What we've found in terms of our success is it's the rooms that have been the most diverse in terms of roles, expertise, and content that have often driven the most productive co-design in so many ways. I've been in so many spaces. I've been lucky enough to be in so many spaces where we all come from different places, and we all realize we went to the same schools and went and had the same professors, and we've done a lot of things. And where it feels really different, it actually ends up being very similar. So where we've actually done most of our best work in our minds, it's actually when we've talked the least, and we just led with empathy and listening. Often our first structure to make it not feel performative or checklist-like is actually just embed ourselves and spend time with people, and see what their normal days are like, see what their lives are like, and not just framing like what problem do you have. I actually don't love that language that I use all the time myself. It's like, what are the challenges, what are the problems, and what are also the opportunities, and who gets to define what those challenges and opportunities are. Very often in schools, those problems are defined by a very select few. But when you actually flip the model and allow other folks to define opportunities and challenges, you end up with some beautiful things. Like one of my favorite examples is we were in a few classrooms in Colorado, and we went in and they were like, let's focus on math and like redefining how we can do X, Y, and Z in math. And the students are like, the election's coming up and I'm really interested in civics. And the students designed their own Playlab apps to help register folks to register in the state of Colorado, which is really, really cool. And it directly led to over 1,000 people registering to vote in their communities. That wasn't my idea. That wasn't their teacher's idea. It wasn't their administrator's idea. It was two kids who came up with it and actually mobilized another 45 students to come together in this campaign. And like at the end of the day, if we go from empathy, co-design, hopefully it leads to agency, which is what I love about that example. It's like, how do you leverage co-design for agency building? Like that's what we're hoping to achieve. We haven't figured it out yet. That's why I'm here learning from folks like you all. So yeah, it's not a one size fit all kind of thing is my big takeaway.
Yeah. So, one of the things that's so interesting about working in EdTech, in my experience, and I'm sure others share this as well, is that you have these two different dynamics at the same time. You want to solve challenges and problems or opportunities. You want to really, you really want to help your end users very deeply. Yet you have these business pressures. You need to move fast and ship product and get to market and advertise. Sometimes there's a little bit of, I would consider it a myth, but let's talk about it. This feeling of, if we spend time going into classrooms and talking to students or talking to educators, letting them come up with ideas, we're going to slow down our process. The engineers will be sitting on their hands, or the designers won't know what to do. And this is like, it's just where the rubber really meets the road. And I'd love to hear each of you sort of make the case for why that's not actually how it works. It's not that, co-design and user research don't slow things down. They actually make it a more effective product, and they put you in the right direction. But I'd love to hear you each say that in your own through your own experience. Katie, can I start with you again on that, and then anybody else can chip in?
Sure, sure. Happy to jump in. I mean, we hear this all the time. And I think there's a couple of reasons. One, I think there's a conception that people think of co-design and they think of user research and they bucket it with, I think, what do I want to say? A misconception maybe, or maybe a deserved idea of what research and development is. This idea that, oh, this means I'm going to have to get into a multi-year, multi-million dollar engagement with an ivory tower institution that doesn't know the realities of my day to day and is trying to prove something out that is unrelated to the realities of me needing to keep my company alive. And I think that can be true with some experiences, and that doesn't have to be true. And there are many of us out here that are really aligning R&D and saying that co-design, demonstrating impact, and building great tools should be all aligned, that they should not be in conflict. And there are methods and approaches that help that be true. So for instance, we try to anchor districts in key go-to-market states like California, Texas, New York to help piloting environments align to where there's incentive for the market. We try to employ really rapid cycle methodologies like rapid cycle approaches that help build product aligned to their product timeline and don't feel divorced, and bring product developers into that process versus feeling it like it's a divorced separate thing. The other thing is I do believe in this new market that we're going into with scarcer resources and districts with kids that are now digital natives. I think we're just in a new environment where the quality of product is more important than ever before. Products will not be renewed, and they will be, if they are not getting fidelity of usage in real classrooms, and I believe if they're not showing impact. I think we're in a new paradigm where districts are overwhelmed with product, are making tough choices with fewer resources, and products that are being used reliably, loved by kids and students, and point toward impact are going to be the ones that win.
High quality products show impact. Use your pilots as a way to go to market and have, get a beachhead. Those are great points. How about the Joan Ganskuni folks? How do you address it when somebody comes and says, well, I have to, how long is this going to take? Because I have to ship something in the next month, or, some version of that.
If they're already thinking about a month, then that might not work so well, because you're not really making space even for the insights you might have garnered from kids and families to even be adapted in the product design. Everything I would say would amplify what Katie just said, which is like you need. I guess it's safe to say that not all ed tech products are very loved by kids or educators, and that maybe that's a problem. I always think about the sort of long arc of fixing a product versus, making something more effective, more loved. We draw a lot of inspiration, of course, from Sesame, which this whole show was started because kids were learning jingles and game show theme songs. And what if we made commercials for letters and numbers? That was the idea. Kids love this. Why don't we just turn it in the direction of impact? And not that we're doing that ourselves directly, but we're helping others conceptualize both what kids really want and what could have an impact at the same time. It's kind of a two-pronged intervention. And the idea that young kids of different ages can express what a product could be. It's not just tweaking the thing you've presented to them, but actually to kind of, through their own imagination, their insights, change the direction in a way that might be closer to what might actually be wanted by the target audiences is key. And then to marry that with the research, the science of learning, in our case, science of literacy, whole child approaches, those things. So you're kind of buttoning all that up at the front end. It might be feel a little slow at the beginning, but then it's going to save you a whole lot of pain and suffering later if you do it well. And so you go slow to be smarter, and then you don't have to pivot later.
Go slow to be smarter, faster, and more beloved, right? Build something on a foundation that people really want. Then you're on a solid foundation. You don't have to do all this pivoting. I think, yeah, I'm paraphrasing a bit, but I think that I'm hearing that in there. Alicia, anything to add there, or Wyman? I'd love to hear your or Meta. You want to add anything else just about that tension between the sort of speed and sustainability, especially if you're a small ed tech startup, but also being like, we really want to build something on a foundation that will make us renew, will create, ambassadors, people who love the product, students and educators who are totally devoted to it, and we want to build the right thing. What have been your experience there?
I'll just add real quick, just underlining what everyone said. It's just going to cost so much more if you get it wrong and you skip it. Sometimes dollar signs speak the loudest to people and decision makers and those that are leading teams and companies. And yeah, I've seen that where the crucial kind of discovery period, the generative research period is really skipped. Um, and yeah, there's just big consequences later. And I think Nina mentioned it in the chat. A few people mentioned it. Yeah, there's just trying to iterate your way backwards after, pouring a lot of engineering dollars. You might be creating tech debt for yourself. Um, yeah, so that's just one thing that I think that speaks to people is when you start sharing examples of when that's gone wrong and you've got it wrong at the very beginning and you're just investing more deeply and deeply in building the wrong thing. And so I think co-design and discovery periods and generative research can really help you determine, is this the right thing? Are we in the right problem space? Is this the right thing? Is this resonating? And getting back to what people said about loving something even, yeah, that takes some investigation to figure out.
Yeah. That's fantastic points. I think probably everybody in this room has been involved in some project at some point that has a sunk cost where you decided early on what you're going to do, and then way later down the line realized it was not the right thing to do for one of many reasons, and wished they sort of aimed more carefully and been co-designing from the beginning. Let's talk about this power dynamics idea that's come up a few times. I think the next section I'd love to talk about is really getting practical for some of the folks in the room about how do you actually do this? Do you do it in-house? Do you work with a consultancy? Like, what is the way to really get this going? But before we do, I just want to get into this power dynamics because it feels like such an important aspect of co-design in education. Wyman, let me start with you. I think you named this, and I know others can jump in as well. Why is it so important to level the playing field basically as you do co-design and not make educators or students feel like they're sort of just checking boxes or just you already know what you want, you're just asking me to say yes to it, like and really make them feel like they're co-building with you and actually allow them to.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing, right? So like I was a teacher and worked in schools for about 10 years. And I remember my whole journey in terms of like what was introduced to me. It was always just like, hey, we're going to use this to do Y. And all of these things were done with really positive intentions, right? And at the core of it, like most people get into teaching because they want to drive impact, and they want kids to learn and they want to help the world and do all these amazing things. Very few people go into teaching to be like, I want to be a product advocate, or I want to learn how to use technology, right? They want to help kids and families achieve what they need to do. So there's a deep, deep, deep amount of like institutional expertise that they all already have. So very often when you don't lead with co-design, you're basically coming in and saying like, I know better than you.
Yeah.
So when you flip that dynamic and say, you know what, like we're coming at it from an asset-based approach. Tell me about your day. Tell me about how you've driven results already. How can we amplify the existing expertise that you all have? And as they're able to build things in Playab, or maybe not even build things in Playab, it really pushes the tension and the questions that they start asking as they think about how that drives towards impact. One of the biggest reasons that we chose to incorporate as a nonprofit is so that we'd be motivated by impact, right? As opposed to scale necessarily. I mean, don't get me wrong, like we have tensions also in terms of go-to-market and speed and scale. But when you're driven by impact, it forces us to say, like, if we don't co-design, we actually might be hurting outcomes. So how do we actually leverage the people who can drive outcomes to think about that is the question we always ask. So it's always worth it, in my opinion, even if it takes longer, and find people to trust you over time. So they share the things, not just they want you to hear, but they need you to hear. And that's very time consuming to build trust.
Yeah. Michael mentioned all these techniques that Sandbox uses to set that level of autonomy and agency and sort of fairness. I'd love to hear you speak about how you do that.
Yeah, and I wanted to also go back to your question about sort of the practical aspects of it and how do you kind of get
Sure.
started. So I want to give a quick shout out also to our implementation partners. So we work closely with the Giant Room in New York City, and we've also worked with UMD Kids team and University of Washington Kids team, and also more recently the West Side YMCA in New York. So we've spent a lot of times building partnerships with community folks who one want their kids to be involved in these opportunities. Again, it's a great opportunity for kids, and we that's one of the things we also want to actually do more research on is what are kids getting out of these sessions in the long run,
Yeah.
and their ability to um, design and co-create with adults and give feedback. But also all of the techniques that are coming from the academic tradition of cooperative inquiry. We're working currently on a co-design toolkit that will be made public in the next year to bring that knowledge out more publicly and more readily accessible to folks, so that people know how to get started, but also working with folks like Lean Lab and us and others might allow people to understand more the process and the techniques better, at least to get started, so that they see how it works in practice, and also the translation piece between what happens in a co-design session and how that translates to actual product design recommendations and suggestions is a significant lift in as well in terms of being able to do that translation of what kids said and drew and wrote on their sticky notes, and how do you actually turn that into, changes that could be made in the product.
Absolutely. And so, and you mentioned the techniques. Tell us a little bit about some of those techniques when you're in a classroom with students. I mean, we don't have to get into the great detail, the deep details here, but when you're with a student or with a set of educators, what do you do to make sure that the power dynamics don't feel like, what Wyman just said, where, teachers often feel like, oh, it's top down. They're coming to me because this is already decided and it's just checking a box. They feel like, hey, I'm really part of this process. They are really listening to me. I can use my institutional knowledge, my professional expertise, and as a kid, I can use my creativity and imagination and my experience. What kind of things are in that co-design, playbook to build that kind of trust, quickly?
Sorry, I was like answering a question. But no, I think where that trust comes from is like not over promising on things. It's knowing what you can deliver on and what you can't deliver on. We chose our name very quickly, but also very intentionally in terms of Playlab. We believe in play to learn, and then testing, right? So you play first, and it's okay to have a longer play period. And then it's that testing and research phase that becomes really important. And being really transparent with people when we go in and work with folks. It's like, we might be a solution, we might not be. You tell us whether it is or not. And if it is a solution, how do we actually back that up with experimentation and piloting so that we actually know it's not just anecdotal, but it's also quantitative as well, and can be sustainable and scalable. We actually don't believe in scale just to scale. We believe in like responsible scaling in some ways. Responsible is a tricky word, but we believe in scaling based on evidence. And that garners trust, right? And when we lead the work, I dropped a link to like a video of Adrian, a teacher, but like we don't want the credit. We want the educators who build the tools to actually be known for what they build. So you're amplifying existing expertise, and that has built a lot of trust. Because we can say it's like, hey, Playlab didn't come up with this idea. Wyman didn't come up with this idea. It's actually Zach in Denver and Adrian there and Tomosa in Ghana, et cetera. And that's really trust building because we're not taking the credit away from them.
Yeah. So, that's right. I think the ability that Playlab specifically has to be able to give that credit and say, hey, the teacher built this tool and other teachers around the country now can use it is really specific and really, really a powerful thing to be able to offer to your to your co-designing partners. Let's talk practical here because I think, a lot of people are here because they already believe in co-design. They may already be doing it. They're looking for sort of implementation ideas. We're here on Friday, morning and afternoon. Let's say people come back into work Monday morning and they're convinced. They say, you know what? I'm there. Co-design is incredibly important. You got to, get everything in place and not waste our time and it's going to be worth it. It's going to be really, we're going to get great insights. How should they think about what to do next? Like, should they be doing things internally and going to find partners, on the ground and going to find schools or going to their existing customers and saying, let's get deeper and do co-design? Should they be working with consultancies and expert groups like you all in this room? What factors internally should help them decide how to really get their feet wet and jump into this space? Michael, let me start with you, and then we'll go around. I'd love to hear all of you on this.
That's a great question, Alex. The value I think in a lot of this for us is humility, like this. And I've heard a lot of today's speakers talk about their own orientation to this space. Like we bring a certain kind of expertise, but ultimately what matters in this dynamic that we're trying to set up is centering the participants, the ones whose ideas are the ones that we need. And so the question of the day is like a fun example of like how you level the playing field, but also honoring or acknowledging the expertise, the unique expertise of your stakeholders. So big open questions like, what could this be like? What should this be? Questions like that, which you might just be tackling as your small product team in a room, imagining a user, or having
Right.
like the kid who lives with you be your product co-designer, which is a little narrow.
Yeah.
So how do you start off those kinds of interactions, and then of course going to source like an appropriate sample that's more representative. The kids of convenience, I think, are a challenge. So those are some of the ideas that I think about.
Yep. So who wants to go next? Alicia, can I send it to you? How should somebody think about if you're sitting in an organization, if you're a small startup or you're an incumbent, just thinking about a new product, what should how should you put the pieces together to say, we're going to start doing co-design ASAP? Let's put a meeting on the calendar. What are they thinking about in that meeting to actually set up the co-design process?
Yeah. Uh, 4 categories that I think through, like 4 stages. It's like you're gonna have some kind of problem discovery. And so, you might work with your other teams. Maybe you have someone who's in support or customer success and uh, identify a person maybe. I think it would, if it's your first time, it would help to be like, find someone friendly, find someone that's, maybe even one of your champions just to kind of get your feet wet.
Mm.
And basically spend some time with them, even if it's just 1 hour. I would say that's pretty short, but even if it's just 1 hour, you're getting into what's top of mind for you and drilling into the problems that they're working on. The second thing would be designing. And I talked about the Johnny Ive example and not wanting to put ideas in their head, but on the
Right.
flip side, you might want to provide some scaffolding for them, versus a blank page. Like for example, I was working with, yeah, district administrators in one of the projects, and so um, I gave them, they had blank pages, but then they also had this page that was like, looked like kind of blank widgets almost. And it looked like an interface that they could just take a pencil to or a pen. And then I gave them a page of like data visualization references. And
Mm.
so one person chose to use those things and wanted to express themselves versus with visuals and drawings. And then the other two in that example were, actually, I want to use words, and they made a what I would call a word wireframe, which I think is an important practice for like any designer actually. And they just kind of, bullet pointed and wrote out what this is what I would want here, this is what I want here, this is what I want here, and they felt comfortable with that. Um, so basically, what I'm saying is prepping for that call. It could be you have something in your back pocket if like a blank page feels really scary, something in your back pocket to give them that's a little bit of scaffolding. And then the third category is like, what do we do with it? People have already mentioned this, but and that translation piece can be tricky. But I think one of the goals is you're trying to think, why are they thinking like this, right? You're trying to get into their mental model and their framework for decision making. And so you being right there as they're working on this will just help you do that. What's really cool though now, and I think Playlab is a good example of this, is nowadays you can literally take that sketch and vibe code an app on the spot with them. And you can basically take your participant, you're not only co-designing, you're co-user testing too. Hey, do you mind if we just go next door? Do you want to show them your app? Like, do you want to, which is, I'm just thinking for anyone, administrator or kid, like that could just be really an awesome experience. And so, what are you doing with it? You're trying to get into the why in their mental model, but you can also, again, create that experience where they're learning like this whole design process. And then the fourth category is, again, planning from the beginning. What are the benefits for our participants? Like by them participating, are we going to try and help them build a community, expand their network? That was one for us. That was a goal for us. Bring ideas back to their spaces. So yeah, problem discovery, designing, what do we do with it, and benefits are kind of like the four categories. And you would be surprised how much you learn with just doing even like bare bones and all of those things. And then you just keep practicing from there. Those, sorry, you're talking practical, so it's just those are
No,
top line things for me.
I mean, that's great. I think, you're outlining some really great ways to sort of jump, like you say, jump right in and sort of DIY, like find friendly users, set up sessions that, really dig deep with them. You can do that, prototyping in real time sounds amazing. How then, how would a company then determine at what level can we do this ourselves? Do we need a dedicated person for it? Do we need to have a UX team? Or do we outsource? Like Katie, I'd love to, when people come to Lean Lab, you've seen this many times. Do they come because there's sort of a moment when they've realized their co-design needs have outgrown their co-design capacity or capabilities?
Yeah. And I think this pairs with like one of the questions in the chat right now about like what do you do when you're in a fairly regulated space or a space with a lot of red tape? And I think that's oftentimes when people come to us. So the reason we have two different networks, an educator network and a school system network, is because of speed, and like speed moves at the pace of trust, to Wyman's point. And so what we realize is that you can get to a decent spot in terms of product development, doing co-design with individual users, like Alicia just mentioned, but it's not going to get you into the actual classroom and to understand, does this product have alignment to the reality of teacher workflows, alignment to the reality of curriculum mandates, curriculum cohesion preferences, alignment to evidence standards, that administrators would feel confident that this is a good investment. And so that's where we have the network. And so oftentimes when people are coming to us, they're looking for two different things. One, they're looking for a streamlined way to get access into a system or a number of systems, because we will handle the paperwork. And like, there's just a lot of just messy logistical stuff, data share agreements, negotiating compensation levels for educators that are in alignment to union preferences, things that just are real, having a real relationship that has with a champion in the district that can actually make things happen, but also has the sign off from the board and the superintendent's cabinet. Like, these are all just real things that happen in school districts that it's helpful to have a partner navigate so that you can stay focused on product. The other piece I would say is the third-party research. So more and more we're seeing RFPs and districts ask for evidence of if this works. And so what we do is we also align our research to the ESSA tiers of evidence, which are the federal standards for evidence. And we're able to be a non-biased third party that says we believe in co-design and making sure that the realities of school make it into the product and implementation. And we believe in rigorous research, and we want to make sure that we can validate if this product is really moving the needle for kids and teachers in a way that buyers can make sense of and then align their resources to. But I would say those kind of two things are, if you're struggling to navigate bureaucracy and you want kind of a third-party credibility, that's a good time to think about partnering with an external partner.
Yeah, that's really thorough, and I think that you raised a lot of really important points there about being able to use co-design to think about compliance needs or on the ground implementation constraints that are, there's this spread between, the video that Meta you showed where he has post-its like, what if the octopus smiled when you did that? Or, what if the example about, what if if you could give people the word power in the game, these really like fanciful, fun, deep ideas. And then the other side of it is the compliance and making sure that you're meeting all of these really complex, bureaucratic procurement needs, but they all are, have a place in this co-design world. So if I'd love to talk just briefly about the sort of decision tree here, just because I know we have a wide variety of different people in this session as attendees. There are people who are doing their own startups, they're in small groups, there are people at huge, multinational ed tech companies who may be thinking about a new product. Perhaps they're thinking about a new AI product that a lot of us in ed tech are. How should companies think about co-design based on their stage? Um, Maida, can I ask you that for first, but I'd love for other people to jump in there.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for us, we are typically looking for partners who are at a point where they are either building new or reimagining some aspect of their product that they are open to making, both in a mindset way of open and also have some resources to actually make changes to their product based on design suggestions, or in our case, also science of literacy recommendations that we're making. And so folks who are really towards the end of their they're launching or they're putting their product out in the market and they are play testing, which we also think is a hugely valuable approach. And we actually have a whole play test with kids website from the Cooney Center that talks about how to play test well. And the co-design toolkit will be sort of a sister site to that co-design with kids. And so they're just different techniques that you use at different points and all valuable ways of bringing kids into the process. So for the co-design piece, we are sort of looking for interest, curiosity on the product partner's part, not openness to making those changes and really listening to what the kids are saying and working with them directly. And I'll put some more information in the chat about how to kind of follow along with some of our upcoming initiatives.
So I'm hearing, you need to have a certain amount of stage, of scale to really work well with partners. I think there's a DIY version. Alicia, let me ask you about this as well. There seems like there's a stage where you can do co-design on your own, and then there's a moment where the complexity of it becomes big enough where you really should often might want to think about either an internal team or a external partner. Tell us about when people come to you, where they're at in their journey, and then we're going to do a little roundtable about the future of co-design. So everybody prepare to think about where you think it's all going. But Alicia, please take it away.
Yeah, awesome. I think a couple things come to mind. One is maybe scale, and then also experience. And so what we found is that some of the folks we work with, their expertise really is in that curriculum space or the education space, and the background in tech and product maybe isn't as extensive. And so that's where maybe we can come in and help, especially with earlier stage startups. We've also seen where the scale of the project that they're trying to do, it's just a bandwidth issue. They need somebody who knows how to basically set a pattern and almost shift culture within, even if it's a small team, shift culture within the company and basically trailblaze a path that others can follow. And so sometimes it's, hey, we don't maybe need you for the whole, a full-time slot for years, but can you come in for a concentrated amount of time to kind of set some patterns for us? Sometimes we found that there's maybe a designer on the team and there's not experience there with working with kids. Maybe there's not experience working in like the education space, ed tech space. We've all just heard examples of it's a different space, and so where they want someone to help complement their internal designer and really supplement some of those gaps. And so that's been some spaces where we found that we've been able to be really helpful as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. This hour has just whizzed by. I can't even believe it, but we're right at our last minute. I want to just do a little sort of lightning round here. Here's the prompt. Looking ahead, as the ed tech world continues to change quickly, we're thinking about personalization, we're thinking about AI, we're thinking about impact as a differentiator, as Katie mentioned. What is one prediction you have about the future of co-design? Let's go around. I'll go, I like reverse alphabetical order. So Wyman, that puts you in the driver's seat. Wyman, what is your prediction?
My prediction is that people have to take themselves less seriously as like the holder of knowledge. And like I think we're going to see a real democratization, hopefully, of who gets to design and who gets to share as information becomes more widespread. So I think it's going to be a lot less telling and a lot more listening moving forward. Or at least that's my hope.
More listening. Michael, how about you?
Great question. I'll build on Wyman. I want to say that these practices are the humanistic response to the age of automation, that we need to actually center these practices as the way forward. I mean, this whole human in the loop thing, I get why that's a thing, but it really just makes humans seem secondary rather than the focus. And if we want the future that to be more human, more equitable, and more meaningful for people, we need this work to be embedded. We need it to be inclusive. Obviously, powered with AI means it will have even more reach and even more speed, but it is only going to serve our needs if we are doing the work well on the front end.
Yeah. Phenomenal. Somebody is in the chat is saying humanistic response to the age of automation. Boom, there's a mic drop of that. That's fantastic. Maida, how about you?
Yeah, and I think we work a lot with kids, and kids are the experts in being kids today, is what we always talk about. So there are no, as much as we think we're kids at heart, we don't know what it's like to be a kid right now. And so we always want to have kids in the room who are experts in being kids today. So
And it's changing faster than ever what it means to be a kid today versus 3 years ago, 10 years ago. Katie, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, I mean, I think it's a fundamental shift in power dynamics. I think people that haven't had a voice or access prior now have access to not only have voice and a seat at the table, but to drive their own design and tools. And I think that's a huge fundamental shift. And I think that'll be really fascinating to see how how we all engage in that process. So I'm excited for that.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Alicia, back to you. Future of co-design.
Tools are just becoming more and more accessible, and that's really exciting to me. I mean, we mentioned this earlier with you could vibe code the things that you're sketching out in the beginning. I just think that design founders are also on the rise. Maybe you've heard that. And so I think that also, teacher founders, student founders, that's on the rise as well.
Phenomenal. Yeah, design founders on the rise. I hadn't heard that. I'd love to learn more about that. We're just putting up a little bit of information on the screen about EdTech Insiders, but you also get a follow-up, whether or not you are here in person, you'll get a follow-up with some really amazing resources from all our panelists about co-design, as well as contact information for all of them. They all do incredible work in this space. I cannot recommend any of them more highly. It's just you can't. They're all amazing. So please look into their work. Go to their websites, check out what they're doing, and as you go on your own code design journey, remember to learn from one another, because no one person has the answer in this crazy, crazy moment. Let me stop sharing here. Stop share. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. We have Tari, almost got it. Meta Ter and Michael Preston from the Joan Ganskuni Foundation. And they do Sandbox. It's amazing. Wyman Koo from Playab, Katie Booty Adorno, one of the OGs in doing co-design, really created the space in many ways from Lean Lab Education, and Alicia Kwan doing incredible work with UX of EdTech, specifically moved into that space, does incredible work as well. Thank you all, and thank you all for being here with us. Continue to learn and do amazing work for our learners and educators. Thanks so much.